Today's video is going to extensively involve a very infamous girl, but I'm not going to tell you her name. Now, I'm not doing that because I'm afraid of her lawyers. I openly invite the opportunity to fight back against a massive unfounded lawsuit by her crummy lawyers and turn it into self-aggrandizing content, a la Dick Masterson.
You! Maddox lost.
Plus, let's be real, girls like bad boys. Instead, the reason I'm not naming this girl is because I want you to focus on the underlying issues rather than further dogpile on someone that has already thoroughly ruined her incredibly privileged life. Specifically, I'm going to tell you about a certain wealthy half-Asian girl who ruined her life only 5 days after turning 18. This spoiled girl from New York City had it all and managed to ruin both her and her family's reputation by starring in extremely degrading hardcore videos. Despite her lawyer's attempts at DMCAing anyone who talks about this topic, this girl is now, in my mind, the veritable poster child for talentless rich girls who ruin their lives due to daddy issues. Her recent actions are doing nothing to change this reputation. But let's start from the beginning. This girl, who I will refer to now as M, was born into privilege. M was born in New York City to a father who ultimately became a vice president of Goldman Sachs, meaning that she was born into money, opportunity, and basically had her life on easy mode from day one. As far as I can tell, M's early life was decent. She seemingly received a lot of arts training, which is pretty normal for someone growing up with money. Conceitedly, M probably had a lot of pressure to study and succeed, and probably rebelled a lot as a kid. That's not uncommon at all, especially amongst wealthier families in New York City.
An A- is a bad grade. A tiger mother can order her kids to get perfect grades.
An A-, it's just like an F. In our family, everybody gets an A. That's unacceptable.
Along those lines, there's some speculation that M might have had some daddy issues, but it's, again, all speculative. At best, we can surmise that her dad wasn't around a lot given the nature of the job. In any event, things began to go downhill pretty quickly once M got to college. M enrolled in Georgetown University, which is not exactly surprising. They have a bit of a reputation for taking in spoiled rich kids. That said, M was allegedly kicked out as a freshman after selling pot out of her dorm. It's unclear why M felt like she needed to sell anything, given her family's wealth, but it suggested her parents were probably trying to limit her disposable income. Then came the big mistake. Just 5 days after she turned 18, finally in control of her own legal decisions, M willingly participated in creating 3 hardcore videos for the internet. Now, I can't show you these videos on YouTube, and I really don't want to. They're not pleasant. As I mentioned before, her father would DMCA them when possible, so I couldn't show you anyway. Suffice to say, the videos are hardcore. These videos are not artistic or the type of stuff you'd expect from a first-timer. They are abusive, in more ways than one. She's willingly slapped, abused, molested, and generally mistreated for uncomfortable amounts of time by significantly older men, and she's clearly out of it throughout the videos. Just to give you an idea of the vibe, the term dead eyes is commonly used by those who watch her videos. So to summarize, a spoiled rich girl that got kicked out of school quickly went to act in extremely hardcore videos. While most girls in college rebel by getting crappy tattoos, M instead decided to get old dudes record themselves abusing her naked body. Then came the infamy. Not long later, the news of M's new hardcore videos reached her family, and her father used his largesse to try to remove the videos from the internet. But it was simply too late. The Streisand effect kicked in, and the story about a rich brat's dad trying to hide her naughty videos began to spread. Next thing you know, internet posters are making fun of him, and they're tracking her and her father down despite numerous attempts at changing her name. She became a particular target for Chinese social media, which is already fairly negative towards Asian women. Nowadays, M is trying to join the art world, but her attempts aren't going so well. Her father has since unfortunately passed away, having spent the better part of 10 years dealing with the shame of his daughter's rebellion. M recently held some sort of art opening that involved prestigious universities like Yale and Princeton.
My work is about exploring my own identity and story, as well as Asian American experience and the experiences of modern people.
But the videos discussing her artwork had to quickly be removed from the internet due to the admittedly hilarious comments referencing her previous body of work.
What's available to the world, it's technology, mathematics. It seems to be the universal language that everybody can connect with. But in my view, the idea that mathematics and technology are universal languages is actually a very Western-centric view.
Notwithstanding the drama, her recent work is, well, bad. While some of her older art is at least pretty to look at and does blend materials in a cool way, her newer art is generic trash that heavily leans on her status as a half-Asian girl to pander to socially conscious critics. In other words, notwithstanding her reputation, this girl is not the next Yuyoi Kusama. She's a spoiled rich kid that seems to be using her parents' money to bankroll her mediocrity into scraps of artistic attention. It should thus be no surprise that M's still fairly involved in the arts and social scene of New York. In fact, there's a pretty good chance that she and I have met in person before through certain events, though I'm going to be very vague about that because, she's got lawyers and stuff. Also, chances are if you're watching this video, you have at least at some point seen her thoroughly beaten up and suspiciously shiny face at least once in your life, even if you didn't realize it was her. Now, all of that being said, I'm not really that interested in talking about her horrendous life decisions much more than I already have. You can throw a stick in Manhattan and hit at least 2 privileged failures like him. Admittedly, this might be because I feel somewhat bad for him. She made a horrendously stupid series of decisions, and she's going to likely have to live with that for the rest of her life. That sucks, even if she does kind of deserve it. Regardless, what I'm more interested in is 2 topics. First, why the internet is so ridiculously obsessed with him, and second, what she could potentially do to fix her infamy. Let's address the first line of inquiry first. Why is the internet so obsessed with this girl? I think there's at least 3 big reasons. First, and perhaps most obviously, it's nice to relish in the failure of a spoiled girl that ruined her own life. No matter how you cut it, Im was born in privilege. Had she not acted like a spoiled brat, she could have probably been comfortable in privilege for the rest of her life, merely by virtue of being born to the right parents. That said, Im ruined it. It feels good to watch someone so lucky plow their life into the dirt, especially if you're someone who wasn't born with that privilege. Moreover, I suspect that some relish in the fact that no matter how much Im's wealthy father spent, he couldn't bury his daughter's mistake. Second, and perhaps less obviously, I think the story is a little painful, and the obsession comes as a form of self-coddling. Whether we want to admit it or not, Im was and is fairly attractive, and on paper she seems smart and well-heeled. Minus the controversy, I think a lot of folks, including myself, would have wanted to date her at some point.
Why would I f an Asian woman? It makes no sense. My kid come out looking Asian.
That said, she's seemingly got a lot of issues, and her poor decisions ruined her life and her family's life. Put another way, it can be kind of scary to think that girls in our dating circles, particularly pretty ones with decent backgrounds, could secretly have starred in degrading videos on the internet. Third, and perhaps most unfortunately, I think that her story is used as ammo by so-called red pillers. The idea that somewhat regular buttoned-up girl could do something so degenerate is honestly somewhat disturbing. As such, the folks in the red pill world are seemingly using her as some sort of object lesson, using her as a way to encourage men to trust women less. Of course, I just can't simply agree with that mentality. As fundamentally broken as Im is, she's far from representative of anything except her own stupidity. In any event, let's address the other line of inquiry. How could Im fix her reputation? I think she'd need to basically do at least 2 things. First, she needs to come up with a genuine and introspective story about her terrible decision-making. Whether you're trying to be sex positive or not, the fact of the matter is that Im is now walking around with a giant scarlet letter. That said, based on some very light research, the most I can find of her acknowledging her mistakes is, in short, a post blaming the production company for being bad, and broadly averring to the idea that she had a bad period of her life. But that's not enough in my view. Im is externalizing blame for something that was entirely her decision, and she needs to own it. Remember, she intentionally sought out the worst possible sort of video she could make. It's not someone who tricked her. She almost certainly had to go out and hunt that opportunity down herself. Specifically, Im needs to be genuine and introspective. She was young, selfish, dumb, and was potentially full of daddy issues. She made a life-altering decision that she almost certainly regrets, and it's essentially her own fault. She's got to own it. Second, and once she's got that persuasive story, she needs to jettison her spoiled image. As I discussed previously, Im is now trying to make her name in the art world, shilling her insipid art. But this is the worst thing she could possibly do. She's continuing to live a spoiled, self-centered lifestyle that normal people could never live, as the art world is far from a profitable one. What she needs to do is take herself down a few pegs, work for a charity, survive off her own paychecks, do something that doesn't involve her name being front and center. She needs humility, not a new and revised form of popularity. The sad thing is, neither of those things are likely to happen. Im's familial wealth is going to continue to help her isolate herself as much as possible from the real world and the consequences of her own actions. It's a bit sad, really. She's going to go to her deathbed not as a famous artist, but as the girl famous for ruining her own life, very publicly, and trying to spin her way out of the consequences of her own actions. As always, thank you very much for watching this video. I'd love your comments, but I do have a favor to ask. Don't mention any of her mini names or nicknames. First off, it's not hard to simply Google around and find her in 2 seconds, so don't make it easy for lazy viewers. Make them work for it. Second, and more importantly, don't let her pretend that this video is some sort of attempt at harassment. By keeping our discussion to the concepts rather than the person, we can better underscore the nature of her mistakes, rather than letting her discount any criticism as coming from incels or something like that. Also, if you're one for lawyers, I invite you to send me a cease and desist letter. I have this spot on my wall at my home office, and I have this frame waiting. I will frame it and pretend to be an internet bad boy to the girls who come back to my place. It will be amazing.